When it comes to the first layer reality, the absolutes of the word, now this is quite triggering to some people out there. Some, even academics in today's world, they argue that there is no absolutes in this word, there is no objective reality. I don't think so. I think that there are different layers of reality. We have the layer of reality that we negotiate, and there are the layers of reality that are more absolute. Yeah. For example, the civil laws or the traffic laws, let's say, these are created concepts, these are created constructs. You see the red light and then you put a pause, and it has its usefulness. You don't want in traffic everyone do whatever they wish. So we want to come to a kind of agreement in due to our safety and its usefulness. But for example, when it comes to gravity, that's a completely different story. Like your opinion really doesn't matter.
Hello, everyone, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the Becoming Podcast. I am your host, co-host JDP, and I'm thrilled to be here with Ashkan, your other co-host. Hey, Ash.
Hello everyone, and hello Jamie.
Yes, always the multifaceted mind, inspirational force, best-selling author and philosopher. That's Ashkan for you. How have you been, Ash?
Quite well. Yeah, we're
Yeah, since
quite
our
busy.
last chat, last busy, there's a lot been happening in the world and society at large, I would say.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah. So today, I would say our episode is, we called it The Journey Within, Between, Beyond, Self Relationships and Society Explored, because right now, society, I would say, is going through a lot, but that starts with relationships with each other in a micro level, and then actually more so relationships with ourselves.
Mm.
So yeah, I want us to comment on a lot of what we have to other stitches, etc. But before we do that, let's start with some comments we have last episode on some of the TikToks that we've made together. So we have, I'm not sure if you remember the relationship shouldn't be 50-50. Do you remember that, Ash?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So David Maximus says any relationship shouldn't be 50-50. It should be 100-100. What do you think about that?
Well, so mathematically, you don't have 100 and 100. You don't have 200%. But I think that I can understand where he's coming from. So yeah, what I was trying to say is like for any relationship to bind and last and thrive, a certain amount of contribution is required. Now, if ideally, like you want people to put the same amount of contribution, but in reality that doesn't happen, and the types of contribution that they make depends on like how they are being is different, and let it be. Why not? Yeah.
Mm, it's awesome. We have another one, Juguna. It was to do with the video about why you should not be single. He says, that's true, like me. I know I have anger problem. I'm short tempered, and yet I'm single. So I think he's saying that if you're having anger problems and short temper, you should stay single. I agree with this, Juguna. I think that's a good idea. Stay single
Yeah.
if you have that.
Yeah, the thing
We
is, it's
haven't.
not just
Yeah.
it's not just like you're if you're angry, because like we all have shadows. We talked about it in the last episode. Like no one is perfect, and if you're going to wait until you're perfect and then go into a relationship, then forget about it. Yeah. The idea behind being in a relationship is not just, at least traditionally speaking, it's not like what's in it for you. Um, it's it's an opportunity. It's a unique opportunity for you to become more than what you are. So, when you go into a relationship, it's not a kind of mathematical aggregation, like 1 plus 1 equals 2, but it's it can be like 1 plus 1 equals whatever. So the
Mm.
idea is you go and then you merge some part of your identity, and as part of that, then you're going to own the shadow or the troubled side of this other person. Now, obviously, you want to be transparent and authentic, and then you want to be clear with yourself and this other person when you go into the relationship. Yeah, so you want to bring all of these positive sides and so-called negative sides up so that you're making informed decisions. But at the end of the day, yeah, so if you're not willing to own someone else's, first of all, if you're not ready to own your own shadows and trouble sides, as well as like another person's, perhaps you should not be in a relationship. Yeah.
Some wise words, Ash. Very wise words. And then the last response we have is John MTLV. I think this is something to do with marriage, is the where you see the shadows. He says, and I'm just going to
Mhm.
put it straight on you. He says, stop scaring people.
Yeah.
Are
So
you
actually,
scaring people?
I was responding to the video you played, and I didn't even know who that person is. But no, it's not a matter of scaring. It's the matter of having a healthy relationship with anxiety. Yeah. So often when we
Mm.
talk about anxiety, we refer to it as we relate to it as a kind of a purely negative phenomena, which is not what I'm talking about here. Anxiety has positive sides to it. Yeah, even like when it comes to stress, it's a more tangible concept to most of people that are hearing us and watching us. We do have a positive stress, which is called eustress. Yeah, so, and that's one of the things. Let's say, for example, in a team, in workplace, some leaders may want to remove all stressful or anxiety generating things from the environment, calling it a
Mm.
emotionally safe environment. But the thing is, in any high performing team that I've worked with or I studied, then there is a level of anxiety going through what ifs. What if this, what if that, like foreseeing the potential future um, is necessary. And I think an effective leader in that regard, in that relationship, in the team, in that workplace, uh, is the one who spreads a good positive level of anxiety so that it generates that kind of, it leads us to that preparedness. So now in this context, I would say no, my intention is not to scare people. It's like to inform us that there are potential consequences to certain activities and certain decisions that we make. But that particular video where this person was talking about the dark side will come out, it's actually a positive phenomena. So that's how I relate to it.
Mm.
Because unless you cast light so that your shadow is being is appearing, it becomes visible. Unless you make that invisible visible to yourself first, you're not going to identify the trouble sides, and if you can't identify the trouble side to address them, then there's no growth. So, therefore, these shadows, while the term may be quite scary to some, the shadow is you. It's just like if the right light is being cast on you from a right angle, then the shadow is going to reveal itself. So,
Mm.
yeah, it's not scary, it's your growth potential.
Mm. I like that. It's not supposed to scare you. It's supposed to show you where you have the ability to grow. It's
Yeah.
great words, Ash. So, yes, today's episode, as mentioned, I said it was about journey within, between, and beyond self, relationships, society. So, we're going to start with self and people's commentary on the self. And then we're going to move on to obviously our own interpretations of what that commentary means and our own perspectives.
Do you have something to say that you're not saying? If you do, then it's your fault. This is your fault. It's your problem. And you might say, well, I'm too afraid to talk. It's like, fair enough. How afraid are you not to talk? People say to me frequently, they compliment me on my bravery. And I think, you don't understand. I'm not brave. I don't like conflict. I'm way more afraid of losing control of my tongue than I am of the consequences of saying what I have to say. Because I know what happens when we allow other people to control our tongues. It's not good.
I think he's saying say what you need to say if he hasn't repeated that enough. But then he contradicts himself saying that he doesn't want to lose control of his tongue. So that's what confused me about that. But I agree with his general point of say what you need to say.
Yeah. So you want me to respond to that? Yeah. So
Yes.
the first thing I would say is wise words. I think that this particular thing that he's communicating, I agree with him. The one thing I would like to say is like while I'm fascinated by Jordan Peterson's ability to articulate matters and experiences, like with his unique ways of putting the words together. Always pay attention to the type of the choices, the word choices a person has. So, and I've seen like in some cases, like with him, he uses quite a strong word, and then sometimes intentionally, which sometimes I would say I wouldn't use those words, but one of them here would be fault. Yeah. So
Fault.
yeah. So if you have something to say, it's your responsibility. Yeah, to say it.
Mhm.
That I agree. Yeah. So that goes back to our autonomy, the relatively high level of autonomy that we have as human beings. Yeah. So it's not someone else's job to come and draw that out of your mind. While that could be really good, and here and there are times that we have support network around us that actually help us and make it easier on us to express what's there for us. And obviously, some of us are um, inherently, better, more effective in expressing ourselves than others. Like conventionally speaking, like it is said that some people are introverted and some people are extroverted, which that's a different conversation we can have. We have our tendencies, we have our differences or preferences. Now, I would say yes, like it's our responsibility. If you have something to say, it's your responsibility to say it. I wouldn't necessarily consider it as a fault, though. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. So the moment that you start talking about fault, it's a conversation around blame. Yeah. And no one wants to blame. Yeah. So this is the thing that sometimes we're talking about factual things, but we are not purely rational beings. As much as we wish to think that way, we are also emotional beings, and we interpret our emotions, we call them feelings, in this way or another way. And the moment that you create that kind of language, it creates a kind of experience. So I wouldn't say that you're at fault, um, but I can say that it's often more effective, and it works towards the integrity of your being and integrity of your life if you can manage to say the things that you so want to say. Yeah. And this is something that lots of people, in different cases, like we can struggle with. Yeah. And sometimes this, let's call it inauthenticity, um, it's not necessarily with negative purposes behind it. Sometimes we don't say the things that we want to say just to fit in. Sometimes we don't want to make someone upset. Sometimes
Mm.
we just don't think is really worth it. So we don't prioritize that thing to be said. And sometimes it is wise. Yeah. So if everyone was going out there and then constantly wanted to voice out whatever was going on in their mind, I don't think that was really um, helping more integrous society, that we have. Um, so as part of authenticity conversation is like for us to know what to say, when to say, and how to say. So let's say, for example, like lots of people, I think that they watched or read the George R. R. Martin's body of work, like the Game of Thrones and the rest of the books. And so there's this character, Ned Stark. And Ned Stark is a soldier. And obviously, he's a man of honor. He's a man of honesty. And if he wants to fight, if he's in war with someone, he wants to do it in an honorable way. And then there's this part that he has these secrets about Cersei, the queen of Seven Kingdom. And if he reveals them, then the whole life of the queen is going to be endangered. So, and then he goes to the queen and spit that out. Yeah, they take that out of his chest, and out of that so-called authenticity, he reveals what his plans are, what he exactly wants to do, and that revealing that information makes Cersei plan to basically seize him, and like, it leads to his death, his execution. So therefore, there are times that you want to consider, you want to have situational awareness, you want to see what's going on, and what is to be said is wise or not. So that is there. But if something is, as Jordan Peterson was saying in this video, if something is really there for you, something is so bothering you, and it has a physiological impact on you. Yeah. So if you want to keep something that is so there and you want to express it, then yeah, sometimes you need to take the leap of faith, and sometimes you need to be courageous enough, know the consequences, and be with the consequences of saying something that it may even generate some consequences for you. Yeah. So in general, I would say yes, like self-expression is extremely important. Um, um, and at the same time, I would say we need to be appropriate and wise.
I really like that George Martin, the Game of Thrones analogy. I think that really drives it home. And yes, we need to say what we need to say. And a lot of times, especially when it's burning, there's consequences of not, but then there's also consequences of saying everything and being too authentic to a point where there's no awareness of
Yeah.
what doesn't need to be said. So I
Yes.
really
Yes.
like
So
that.
that's the thing. It's very interesting. Like Jordan Peterson is often referred even by himself as a conservative, and the thing is, um, but some of the things that he says is actually quite left. Yeah, so it's opposite to that's my view. Very, very interesting. Yeah. So for example, like sometimes he wants to revolutionize things,
Hmm.
through his speeches. Like he wants to make some massive, um, changes, cause transformations. And that's not a very conservative thing to do. But like the whole idea behind being conservative is like, see, we know so many things are not in its place. So, what should we do? Can we go realistically and then, destroy any existing order and change everything, transform everything from scratch? Well, we know that realistically that is not possible. So therefore you go, oh, we know that all these faults and problems and defects are there, but let's prioritize them wisely. Which ones we should go and then we should address first. And then you go, in a kind of a progressive way, but with a kind of a pace that you can handle them. And then you go and then change those things. Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So let's go. Let's keep on with Jordan Peterson because, as you said, he's quite paradoxical in that he says he's conservative and then wants to make revolutions. This is still to do with self.
So one of the things I've suggested to my audience of young men is that you're going to be looking at some point in your life when the chips are down and the storms are rising. You're going to be looking for something like a sustaining meaning. And if you don't have it, God help you in those situations. And they're definitely coming. In fact, you might be living chronically that way right now, right? Depressed, anxious, nihilistic, on the edge of suicide. Because why? Because you haven't adopted any meaningful responsibility. Hey, look, the emptiness in your life isn't because you don't have enough rights. You have all the rights there are. You have more than you should. And it isn't because you lack consumerist options. You have Amazon and pornography, man. You can get whatever you want whenever you want it. And if that's still not working, well, what are you missing? Well, maybe you're missing the opposite of that: a little bit of restraint, a little bit of sacrifice, some responsibility.
I don't mean to be divisive in, men versus women, but specifically in terms of this TikTok, and just my personal feelings, there's a sort of state of crisis that men are facing in this current environment, in current society, in that they're either just these sort of lost, weak things that play video games all day, or they've gone completely on the other side, um, and they worship these people like Andrew Tate, or these complete, would say, idols and figments of imagination and caricatures of what a masculine energy is. And if you're not on one side, then I feel like a lot of men nowadays are very lost in what constitutes manhood. So I really am interested, Ash, in what your take is on what Jordan just said.
Sure, sure. See, if you want to zoom out, I think a big part of what he was explaining is relevant to everyone, no matter their sex or gender. Yeah,
Correct.
we as human beings, we are confused. There's no doubt. Yeah, so we
Mm.
are confused because there are tremendous number of limitations associated with our sensory abilities. See, you can't hear as good as so many different animals. You can only hear certain frequencies, yeah, or your sense of sense is not going to be anywhere close to a dog. So there are limitations to our sensory abilities. At the same time, then we go to another level. Like there is quite a good amount of limitations associated with our perceptual structure. You hear a sound, you don't know is that the door shutting or it's a shotgun being shot. You know, you go back to your memory, the categories in your mind, and you perceive that as something. It may not be real. In other words, we could say that um, the fascinating characteristics of our perceptual structure is you can see the things that aren't even there. For example, you can be delusional, and at the same time, you can not see the things that are so apparent, so close to your eyes, and you don't see them. Yeah. So now we go one level higher than this, and that's our rationality. That's our conceptual structure, your mental processes, comparison, reflection, contemplation, analysis. Yeah. When it comes to our rationality is not also um, perfect. Yeah. Perhaps most of the mistakes that you have made in your life, I mean, not objective mistakes, the decisions that you have made that you consider them as mistakes looking in retrospect. Yeah. So very likely you have made them through your rationality at the time. So basically, rationality is not this one thing that it's going to be constant, it's going to be something permanently sitting there and it's perfect. So our
Mm.
rationality doesn't work in our favor all the time. Now, having said all of these things, it's no wonder that we are confused.
Mm.
We're confused. So, and I think that what Jordan was talking about is this confusion, which belongs to everyone. Any human being would have a degree of confusion around certain different things. And that's exactly is one of our most important vulnerabilities. Because who wants to be confused? You want to have clarity. You want to know, you want to have that sense of meaning. I don't think there's anyone out there that goes, "Oh, I don't want to have meaning. I only want to have rights." So yeah, it is fair that like people like Jordan they talk about the necessity for meaning. And yes, I
Mm.
understand that in society, especially amongst the young people, you can see there's lots of conversations around the rights and privileges, particularly from a societal perspective. But then at the same time, we're not focusing on the responsibilities because, see, at the end of the day, your right or your proposed right is someone else's responsibility if it's not yours. Yeah, so we can't just have that half of the conversation. So that's very relevant. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's not like to go there and then tell someone, okay, so you need meaning. I don't think anyone is not aware of that. It's a good reminder. It's a good reminder, but I think everyone knows that they need meaning in their life. So what I would add to this is to go to someone and say, "Oh, you need meaning." It's not necessarily going to solve their problem. Yeah. So if I want to recap, is like I agree with him in diagnosis. I think that that problem is there and doesn't only apply to men or young men. We are all confused. At the same time, I don't think that just bringing that up and then talking about that is going to be the solution. Yeah, because finding meaning or creating meaning is a tough of a job, and this is exactly, this is where mostly intellectuals can be quite biased. See, for example, Nietzsche, the German philosopher, um, talks about this thing that in principle he suggests that like people should be able to create their value framework or hierarchy of values. um, it's easy for one of the greatest philosophers in the whole human history with very high level of IQ to say that. But I mean, most of the times, most of the people, they would struggle around like what to eat for dinner, you know. And this is a reality. This is not even something to look down on anyone, or this is something we deal with, and to come up with parallel, personalized hierarchy of values and coexist amongst others. It's like 8 billion gods are going to be living together. So therefore, it's a tough of a job to come up with what is to be considered value to you, or how to create or find meanings. Does that make sense? So I would say uh, that's exactly why, instead of just talking about these matters, then I strongly believe in transformation and people working with the um, right mentors and right coaches, that they can support them so that they can create that uh, meaning or find the meaning or bring intentionality into their life. So it's extremely important, but it's not going to be created just reminding that to people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think again, not to be I completely agree, Ash. It's definitely in terms of meaning, you can't just say you need meaning and then not have a way. Not again, not to be divisive. It's just on my personal observation of, let's say, this new generation of what's been happening and people
Yeah.
my age and younger than me. What I've noticed is that not all, but many women usually take on a form of responsibility growing as they mature. They somehow take some sort of responsibility. I think it's to do with childbearing. I think it's to do with the perhaps hormones that kick in
Mhm.
at a certain age. um, whilst many men, especially young men at the moment, because there is not that, I would say prior to this information age, there was a clear structure of how society should be, and there's clear
Yeah.
roles that had to be played. Now, with the uprising of many different, isms like feminism, etc., now there's less of a gap, or it's more blurry as to what a woman must do, what a man must do, and
Yeah.
there's less of that need, right? So there's less of a necessity to have like pure brute strength,
Yes.
or just
Yes.
build all day, etc. So I
Yeah.
feel like men don't have that same structure as to man does
Yeah.
A, B,
Yeah.
C.
Yeah.
So what is happening now is, without that responsibility or without that clarity as to, you know, what what's happening, and then an excess of
Mm.
so much else, distraction, video games, pornography, social media. I'm just noticing from my personal experience, and again, I'm not saying I know everyone, but then it's leaving men in this very lost, weak state. And I'm not saying that women aren't, but from my
Yeah.
observation, women tend to find their sense of responsibility the older they get because of the the duty of having to bear a child, of having to raise their
Yeah.
family. But men don't have that same drive. I don't know what it is. What's happening?
Okay. So I was not definitely evading the notion of the differences between the genders that as you brought them up. I just wanted to first establish this thing that what he was explaining to me in
Mm.
big part has to do with all human beings. You know, we deal with confusion and seeking meaning or creating meaning. It matters, and it's not easy job to do. Yeah. So uh, that I wanted to establish that. But if you go to the second bit, yeah, I agree with you. See, and this part of the conversation can be a little bit controversial because see, we're living in this era that questions come up like, "What is a woman?" Yeah. So and then like we were going and having these conversations that, mm, let's say, a couple of decades ago would have been considered unnecessary. Yeah.
Yes.
So yes. So now so if we want to zoom out and then look into it, is trans historically, yeah, I don't say this is how it should be, or I mean, I'm saying that my understanding is trans historically, um, women or young ladies, they had an intrinsic value in the eyes of men. You know, so for example, like if you are a woman and you're beautiful and nice as the whatever nice supposed to mean, like since like when you're like 16, 17, whatever, um you're at the peak of your value in terms of beauty, in terms of fertility, and that was the thing that the societies valued the most perhaps in during the history. And therefore a woman didn't necessarily need to do much to be considered valuable. Like a woman would have received the attentions. This trans historically again is considerably different to men. Yeah. So men, they needed to create value to be seen. They needed to fit themselves in the kind of a social hierarchy. They needed to have a social status to be appealing and to be considered as a thing in the eyes of women. Yeah, to be
Hmm.
selected. And you
Hmm.
can even look into it like in the nature, and then it's clearly obvious how the males would fight, and then the winner would be selected by the nurture or by the females. So now, and the thing is now all of these heteronormative things, roles have been challenged. Now, I'm not pretty sure, to be honest, what amount of this heteronormative roles have been the result of social constructs or social constructions, and what amount of it is actually quite mm, well, you would say absolutes of the word, to what degree
Mm.
they are being driven by biological factors, uh, or so if any of these roles are social constructs, then yes, you can negotiate that piece of reality. But when it comes to the first layer reality, as I have it in my being book, the absolutes of the word. Now, this is quite triggering to some people out there. Some even academics in today's world, they argue that there is no absolutes in this word. There is no objective reality. I don't think so. I think that there are different layers of reality. We have the layer of reality that we negotiate, and there are the layers of reality that are more absolute. Yeah. For example, the civil laws or the traffic laws, let's say, uh, these are created concepts. These are
Mm.
created constructs. You see the
Mm.
red light, and then you put a pause, and it has its usefulness. Yeah, so you don't you don't want in traffic everyone do whatever they wish. So we want to come to a kind of agreement in due to our safety and its usefulness. But for example, when it comes to gravity, that's a completely different
Mm.
story. Like your opinion really doesn't matter. You can't say that I
Mm.
disagree with gravity and then go and jump from. Now, obviously, when it comes to the physical world and material world, when it comes to this absolutes of the word, I think that most people would acknowledge that. But when it comes to metaphysics, when it comes to the realms of ethics, when it comes to the things that the laws that govern our interactions, that's a little bit more blurry. Long story short, I think that there is a part of it that is social construct and the part that are not. Now, going back
Mm.
to men, yes, I absolutely agree that in today's world, some of the things that traditionally have been considered masculinity is being demonized or being are turning into these scary things. Yeah. So, for
Mm.
example, any level of um, masculine energy and competitiveness, things like that, is being considered aggression. And it's being considered violence. So I know, for example, in many schools, they get the boys to be sitting there reading and like drawing paintings and everything, while they just really want to go around and run and da 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 da, and they want to release that energy. By the way, a big part of it is has to do with temperament. Like for example, my own daughter at the age of a little bit more than 2 years old is quite active. But most often we see it with boys. Yeah. So the thing
Mm.
is. If that's the case, and that energy needs to be released, and it's being constantly suppressed by the to dos and not to dos in the society, and the environment, and is being considered um, um, something abnormal. Yeah. So that's going to impact the boys. And I remember um, the time that I immigrated to Australia, like over 10 years ago. uh, right in the first few days on billboards, I was seeing the posters being put up there by the government, by authorities, around domestic violence. And then they would depict this picture of this woman being there, partly having bruises uh, on her face, and then there's this little nice, sad little girl. But then we had this boy who was like very angrily standing there, like I'm talking about like 6-year old boy or 7 year, and he was saying that teach them before it gets too late or something like that. Now, I mean, like if there's certain type of environment that is keep telling these men that you cannot express yourself, there's no way for you to channel it, because the moment you start channel it, it's going to be considered toxic masculinity, etc., etc. Then yes, you're going to disenfranchise them. You're going to marginalize them. You're going to push them away, and they're going to put that energy that could traditionally be um, channeled properly in constructive things. It could be channeled into a little bit heavier sports. It could have been competitive sports. It could have been channeled into I don't know, like constructive things, yeah, physical games, etc., etc. Now they're
Mm.
going to go and then find refuge in playing computer games, being in virtual reality, and spending time online to get rid of that energy. And this is impacting
Mm.
boys
Mm.
particularly. Yes.
Mm. I
Yeah.
agree with that. I'm seeing too much of a pattern of them finding refuge. That's exactly the word, and putting
Yeah.
out that physical energy in the mental virtual
Yeah.
world. That
Yeah.
and that's when we get. I think that's when we get the actual toxic
Yeah, but again,
masculinities.
then let me connect these things together, because see,
Yeah.
that confusion, like it can manifest itself differently due to your sex. Like women would be quite confused in today's world, that because uh in the in the old times, it was quite clear that part of meaning and purpose was quite clear. Okay, so you do this and you get married and then you have the children and then da 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 da, all that. But today there's so many different options available due to waves of feminism, let's say, and social discourses and negotiated realities, uh, that all those options obviously are causing a degree of paralysis. Like when you have so many different options, you can do so many different things, and there are these narratives that, oh, you need to focus on your career, you need to prioritize career over your building a family, spending time with your kids, and this is quite sad. This is definitely
Mm.
quite sad. I'm not saying that women should do this or that, that they should be able to choose, but at the same time, then what is it? What are the forces that are influencing your decisions? Really, any authentic person wants to look into that. Yeah.
Mm.
And I've seen in my interactions with many women that I work with, sometimes I've heard that they say, I said like, what do you do? And then this person goes, oh, I'm just a housewife. I don't know what does that supposed to mean. Why you're just a housewife? It's like if by that you mean like you're taking care of children, and that's a big of a thing. That's a very very valuable thing to do. Like you're literally bringing new human beings into the society, and the way that you
Mm.
treat them, the way that you train them, it can lead them in great part to become constructive members in society who contributes in the future, or they're going to turn into be like criminals or cause problems in a society. So that's a very so that family unit is this smallest unit of like the whole society. So it's
Mm.
an extremely important job to do. And then to see a person say, "Oh, I'm just that," that indicates that it seems that there is some pressure from the society on that person or the people they make that kind of decision, as if like they're not contributing enough. Somehow, like
Mm.
going and sitting in a at a desk in like working in a bank or something is going to be more valuable than spending time bringing new human beings into the world and spending time with them. So that can create lots of confusion for them. At the same time, the confusion for men could be manifesting itself quite differently. Then again, men are quite confused. They're confused now. What is consent now? This is a big conversation, like in the world today, the modern world. They can't read like what is consent and what is not in relationships. They don't know whether they should bring a little bit of chivalry, like to respect women like a gentleman differently, open the door for them, or like the person is going to be quite offended by that.
Mm.
And yeah, should they pay for the first date or not? And so yeah, so there's tremendous amount of confusion due to us challenging that status quo. Again, I'm not saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. It's just an analysis. At the
Mm.
end of the day, it's like for us to develop our conceptions of different parts of reality and establish the integrity of our lives first individually. So we need to set our life in such a way that it works for us at least, um, and then hopefully we can contribute to the integrity of the whole society or humanity. Um, yeah, so that's how I would respond to that.
I agree. It's awesome.
Mm.
Lots of juice for that content. Move to the next one. We have Gabor Mate. Did I pronounce him correctly?
Yeah, I know him. Yeah, I know.
If I were to choose to live my life over again, I wouldn't live it in this way. Do you know Winnie the Pooh?
Yeah.
Okay,
Not personally.
no, no. The book. The end of that book would bring tears to my eyes for years. Christopher Robin has to go to school, and he's telling his friends, the toy animals, that he won't be able to play with them so much anymore. And what I wasn't aware of when I went to medical school and when I was a physician is how driven I was to justify my existence in the world. I wish I hadn't worked so
Mm.
hard. When you're driven to work too hard, you actually ignore what matters. And what matters is what you were telling me last night about how every summer you take a bunch of weeks away from your podcast and you just spend time enjoying your kids and your wife and your family. I didn't do that. I always felt I had to keep working. And the book ends with the statement, and whatever they do, wherever they go in the enchanted forest, the little boy and his bear will always be playing together. And that phrase would bring tears to my eyes for years. People sacrifice their playfulness, their joyfulness, being driven by unconscious needs to validate your existence. And where does that come from? Again, that comes from childhood trauma. Play is so important, and joy is so important. In that sense, we can always keep playing in the enchanted forest, and that's just essential, I think.
So yeah, so the very kind of high level comment on Gabor Mate, and now that you bring him up, amongst many of the people, I wouldn't use the term intellectual because that's quite like bastardized these days. But amongst the people that they actually are truth seekers, and they actually put the time and effort, and they're committed not to be necessarily biased, at least consciously. I think Gabor Mate is doing a great job. Yeah, he's doing a great job by being just in his analysis of different matters. Yeah. So going back to what he was saying, this is the first. Do you want to say how does it land? How is it landing for you?
For
Jamie?
me, I have a lot. I mean, I don't want to go on about what I'm thinking too much, but he's saying play is important, and these are things I agree with. Maybe it's
Mm,
because I live in Australia. I believe that people don't work hard enough. Um, I don't. I think yes, play is important, but people will take that and say, "Oh, not play, wonderment, fun. That's so important." But if you're working in things that you love, if you found what you really love, then it is
yeah,
already fun. It is already great. So, if anything, work harder. Maybe that's just me being a bit of
yeah,
a person, but that's what I believe.
yeah. So that's a great, really good pick. See, hmm. So when it comes to work, what is a work? Yeah. So in my book, Being, I talk about this thing called contribution quadrant. Contribution quadrant is like if you draw kind of a cross, and then at the very top, on one side, you're going to have the things that you care so much about,
Hmm.
that are important to you. Yeah. So you care about them, and
Hmm.
you're effective at. Yeah. So there are things that you care about them, and you're very effective at them. And then at the bottom, we have on the same side, you're going to have the things that you care about them so much. You really are passionate about them. You care about, but you're not good at them yet. You're not effective at them yet. Yeah. See, for example, you may
Hmm.
want to become a pilot. You really love flying, but you know that you're not effective at it yet. But then again, good. You can go on and learn all that. On the other side, then we have the things that you don't really care about them, but you're effective at them. Yeah. So this is what normally it's called job. And we often get confused, when we talk about career and job. Most people, like, they have jobs, they don't have careers. It's like a kind of a myth that even university, the trade schools of these days, they contribute into that delusion. Yeah, so you have career hub as if like everyone is building a career, and yeah, they will promise you. No, they can land a job, with
Mm.
some. It's going to take some years statistically for them to find a job in a relevant field that they have studied, they have degrees. Now, and then there are things that there are areas that you don't really care about them, and you're not effective at them at all, and you're not even willing to be effective at them. So this is also called job, yeah. So this is something just to pay the bills. Now, and paying the bills is an important part of life. I'm not. It's not funny. Like, it's not like we're not making fun of people that they just want to pay the bills. At the same time, I would say that where your self-expression, where your self-expression can link to your unique contribution, the unique contribution that you can make to the world, to humanity, and this actually links back to that sense of meaning that Jordan Peterson was talking about. Yeah. So if you get to know yourself better and better as you live, if you develop that self-awareness, because like, your understanding of yourself in the context of living life is going to constantly evolve. And then if you make yourself present to that, then you're going to make decisions that are more aligned with the true authentic expression of yourself, this ever evolving self, or constantly being in this state of becoming. Yeah. And then as you have this deep understand this deep evolving understanding of yourself, you are committed to express yourself. And one major way of making turning that expression of self into major contributions is work as vehicle or entrepreneurship, let's say. Yeah. So if you relate to working like that, then working is not a burden. It's a commitment that is so linked to your sense of meaning. That's why, like I often talk about the next wave of economy is going to be purpose driven economy. So especially the young people, they're not necessarily very intrigued by getting a high paying job and working in some corporation. We work with many of them, and we know that they actually seek purpose. They seek meaning in the work that they do. So it's a purpose-driven economy that is being created, and I think the leaders, the ones that they can inspire, and they can create the vision, they can align people around that, are the ones that are going to succeed as we go. So, um, going back to that is like definitely if you relate to work as a burden, then you're going to balance it. Yeah, so we say work-life balance. What I'm more for is like a work-life integration. When you integrate um, the work that you do, it's something that in big part you like it, you enjoy it, it's part of the expression of yourself. You turn it into a contribution, and then obviously, if you put a effective financial structure around it, then the byproduct of your expression of self and contribution and service to a group of people, let's call it market or client or users or whatever you want to call it, then it's monetary wins.
Yes. Yes, I,
Yeah,
I completely agree with that, Ash. It's not work if it doesn't feel like a job or that other quadrant if you truly
yeah.
care and you're good at it, I would say.
But then one more thing is like, but if you go back to Gabor Mate, I think that what he was trying to say is like sometimes we get too serious, and like we have this
Yeah.
mission, career wise or whatever else, that we go quite serious. We go, like I need to dedicate myself fully in this, and then
Mm,
along the way, you're going to miss the opportunities to just sit there and enjoy the moonlight because it's going to be once a month. If you're going to have full moon, it's going to be
mm,
once a month. Now, I mean, here and there, like a few days here and there, you're going to see it a bit bright, but and even that one day is not going to be fully guaranteed because it can be cloudy. So you may then not be present to so many of these little things because all these little things in life are going to seem insignificant in comparison with this big of a vision that you have if you're too serious. Yeah. And then
mm.
you're going to,
Wow.
even when you achieve your goals, when you hit the target, then you look back and then you say, oh, wait a moment, did I pay enough attention to the moonlight? Did I pay attention to the difference between the taste of this tomato and that tomato? Did I spend enough time with my kids and with friends and before it's too late? Because we're not going to be here forever. So I think what he was trying to point out is like if it get too serious and too laser focused, we're doing that at the expense of saying no's to all these other things in life. Yeah.
Yeah, I really feel that. I think my quadrant, there's only two things I'm really good at in life, and that's making things in terms of like technology or whatever, designing. And the second one is entertaining people. And the moment I take one of them too seriously and I put too much pressure on myself, I no longer enjoy it and I no longer even produce good results. I don't
Yeah.
make good things. I'm not funny or likable or even make good nice things. And the moment I take the pressure off and I think I just want to make something cool, then that's when, yeah, that really hit, Ash. Thank you for that.
The thing you have to understand is the primary law of human psychology. And the primary law of human psychology is that people judge on appearances. They don't sit there and try and figure out who is the real Jordan Belfort. What is really like behind that mask? Or who's the real Robert Greene? They look at your appearances. They look at your body language, your tone of voice, how you project yourself, what you actually say, the superficial things.
Sure.
And you have to be aware of that, and you have to be able to craft it to some degree. And a lot of people don't like that aspect, because I'm saying to be successful in this world, you have to be a bit of an actor.
I mean, coming from someone who does acting, I agree and then I don't agree. I agree and I don't agree. I think to certain people, there are some people that will judge you based on X, Y, Z, and then you need to put on a facade. And I personally don't agree to that. I don't like it, but
Mm,
I've noticed it's a reality of life that you have to sort of accept. But I believe
mhm,
that there are people who see beyond the facade, and there is no shiny Armani suit. There is no Rolex that can show that can hide what's truly inside. I don't know.
mm,
For example, you see someone like Mark Zuckerberg. If you look at him from a lens of the Robert Greene's lens, then he is not a successful person. You will see him and think, "Oh, that's a boring guy. It's a normal guy." But he was the one of the youngest billionaires in the world, and he's created the most successful social media platform of all time. So I don't I, I don't know, Ash. I'm genuinely curious. What do you think about that?
mm. See, so when the moment that we talk about persona, um,
Mhm.
um, because see, we have the conversations we have about ourselves with ourselves. That's our self-image, the way that you're relating to yourself, and then we have the conversations you have with yourself. Sorry, the conversation you have about yourself with others. And that's the persona that, as he said, you craft, you forge, and then you project it out there. So we all do that, and it's necessary. I haven't seen a single person not doing that. Yeah. Everyone has a persona or multiple personas. The thing is how authentic that is. Now, when we talk about authentic personas, we don't necessarily talk about your persona being identical to the totality of you. As a matter of the fact, Carl Jung talks about this danger associated with becoming identical with your persona. Say, for example, if you're a judge, you're playing a major role, like in the court. At the end of
Mhm.
the day, you're going to make a decision if someone is going to be sentenced to whatever or not. So, but then becoming identical with your persona, professional persona, it's quite dangerous because like the moment that you leave that court, then you're not a judge, you're a father, you are a partner, you are, I mean, you are a human being. You're a human being who may enjoy playing golf and going and watch movies at night, or just put on like floral clothes and shirts and go at the beach. And so therefore you don't want to become identical. See, I wanted to make that clear. We're not saying that you become identical. Plus, like, not everyone needs to know everything about you. I'm not saying that you
Mm.
don't reveal it. I'm saying that eh, I may not be as interesting as I wish to think. Like, not every aspect of me would be interesting to my audience. So then therefore it's extremely important for you to be able to develop authentic persona that it fits into the context of what you're trying to do. So
Mm.
the problem is if you're forging a completely inauthentic persona and 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 that is not you. Yeah. So for example, imagine that you don't have any medical qualification, you haven't gone through medical qualification, and then you keep voicing out all these opinions around medicine and everything, and then you go out there and start practicing. Yeah. So this is
Yeah.
this is a kind of a, yeah. So that you didn't have the rigor, you didn't have all that background that it was needed for you to become a physician, and then you're wrongly occupying a title or a position, or so therefore, I would say creating personas, developing persona over time is extremely important, and that's what, like, you have your self image, you try to understand yourself, and that understanding is constantly evolving. I'm not necessarily suggesting that there is this fixated thing within you, or your understanding of any so-called fixated thing is fixated, and then you project that out there, and then you receive feedback from the environment, from others, and then this would gradually develop your persona out there. So this is quite necessary. Yeah. So you cannot not have that. And everyone has it. Now, the thing is how intentional you are around it. Yeah. So now, you talked about like putting the Rolexes on or things like that. Yes. So, I mean, his observation, like Robert Greene's observation, I think is accurate to a degree where, most of the time people would just like have this first impression, like they just see how you dress, how you talk, your whatever, it's like immediately accessible to them. And then they're going to have this first impression. But then the people that are a bit more, I would say, polished, yeah, and experienced and mature and wise, they would let themselves go beyond that initial understanding of someone. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that inference, that inferring someone's character by the first couple of minutes that you're going to meet them, sometimes is necessary. Yeah. So it's a kind of a instinctive thing that we do. But are you wise enough that, okay, you have this initial understanding? Are you willing to be epistemically humble to let
Mm.
that whatever understanding, initial understanding you have, be challenged in further interactions with that person? So that is there. Yeah. So that is also there. Yeah. But in no
Mm.
way I think that you should be an actor to the point that you just like create this fake persona, putting it out there just because it suits your um um whatever intention you have.
Your
Yeah.
ego, your delusions. Um, I have a question. So,
Mm.
for example, I think Robert Greene's trying to say it's important to sculpt some sort of, show some external signs of your internal polish.
Yeah.
I personally don't like it, maybe because I'm a very philosophical
Mm.
person, but for example, let's say retail workers, they judge you by your shoes, they judge you by your watch, they judge you by, very small signs of where you stand in society. Um, that could be important to the retail worker to see, to judge how much they want to spend with you. But I think what Robert Greene was saying is that a certain level of finesse or whatever, of polishing, is crucial to be successful in the world.
Yeah, and like in my business career, like working with different countries and being in different places, I think there's certain cultures that they would way more emphasize on that. See, for example,
Right.
like in Dubai, you definitely see that. Yeah, so the way that you dress, the way that like you present yourself, like it categorizes you within a kind of a um, class in the society. Yeah. So in Singapore, I've seen it, like in certain places are like that. And in other places, including Australia, where we live, it's not necessarily a like yeah. So you don't necessarily show off, or
Yeah.
don't necessarily need to put yourself in a kind of a class within the society. Um, yeah, I mean that's what I have to say. Yeah.
So you're saying it's contextual in terms of maybe where you are in the country, what you're trying to show. Because,
Yes.
for example, for me, if you make some brilliant things and you're very wealthy, why, what's the necessity of having to show X, Y, Z?
Hmm.
But I think what
Well,
Robert Greene's
yeah.
saying is you should be doing that, which I don't
Well, the thing,
find
the
necessary.
thing, the thing is, there are enough number of people out there with their equipped eyes. So that's the thing, yeah.
Right.
See, yeah. So, like, for example, you go and then you put on Louis Vuittons and da, da, da. So most of their clients, most of the people that they buy, I will know that they're not necessarily rich people. Yeah, so they may be like high paid employees, and that they want to appear to be rich. Yeah. So and they so know that. Yeah. And but see, that doesn't mean that I'm saying that whoever is putting like these brands and the whole idea is yes, like the way that you present yourself matters to people out there. But at the end of the day, I will go mm, developing your persona and the way that you carry yourself. It goes way beyond um like these this kind of accessories and everything. But yeah, so I can see that in the times that like I have very expensive watches just because I have a collection of watches. At the same time I have like some Casios that I really like them, some Seikos that I really like them just because how they look, and they're not going to signal that kind of a success, but I don't think that's the reason I have my collection of watches. So but I
Mm.
totally understand that, like, if you are more into, let's say for example, you're in a business and you're more into building this transactional relationships, and you're not, like, the parties are not going to give themselves enough time to study each other. I think that it's going to make some sort of impression, but again, that goes back to your longer term strategies. Yeah. So if you're building decent long term relationship with business partners and commercial partners, and you're going more long term, you want to find people that are not superficial. You're going to find people that you can be authentic with them. They can respect you for who you are, and you can respect them for who they are, and building this kind of relationship, they last better and they work better. Yeah. But if you're, for example, in a kind of a transactional businesses, some businesses by nature may be like that, um, and you may have very little time, and you may want to impress them and everything, and these are like choices people can make. Yeah.
Right, right. From what I'm hearing, if you want lasting relationships, or if you're looking for long-term lasting business relationships, then that shouldn't matter. But if you're looking for transactions, aka a one-night
Mm.
stand, aka easy purchase, maybe you're a salesman, and not looking down on salesmen, but then it makes sense to flash around. Wow, Ash, seems like we've gone almost through time, and we haven't even gone through half, so I'm guessing we're going to have to make this a two-part series. Are we cool with that?
Of course, yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Yes. So next week we'll have part 2 of the journey within, between, beyond self, relationships and society. For now, you can follow this channel, which is at Ashkan Tashvir, and then you can follow Ash individually. Ash, where can they find you?
Yeah, so YouTube would be the best place, and they can also go to my Genesis profile, which we put the link into the description.
All the links in the description. You can find me at JDP, and also find me on Instagram and TikTok at JDP. So thank you so much. Don't forget to look at the links in the bio for everywhere we can follow Ashkan and the rest of the Becoming podcast. And stay tuned for part 2.
Thank you very much, Jamie, and thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Ash.